Yo, what is going on, everybody? It's Jonathan back again with a weekly scuffle, and today I'm gonna do a quick little mock draft, Pro Bowl edition. The Pro Bowl's this week, so I thought I might as well come and do a mock draft. You know, it is Senior Bowl weekend, I believe this week or next week. I'm not entirely sure, but Senior Bowl weekend is soon, so maybe we'll see some prospects that we weren't quite expecting fly up boards because they had a solid Senior Bowl. It's definitely happened before, but to start off this draft, I think, it's very obvious. Jaguars just need help of any kind. I think they need talent. And I do think the number one most talented guy in this draft is Kayvon Thibodeau. I think it makes a lot of sense. Get the number one player in the draft this year, get the number one player in the draft last year. Just keep building the trenches, keep building the O line. Definitely need help on that side, and potentially a wide receiver later on in the draft. But for now, I'll take Kayvon Thibodeau. Next, this match is made in heaven. Really, the Michigan guys staying in Michigan, playing for the Lions, who were a pretty good team. I like Dan Campbell. I liked him when he was the Dolphins interim head coach, and I think he brings good energy. I think Aiden Hutchinson will actually be very good for that culture. He's a proven winner and a solid prospect, and I think that's definitely a solid pick for them. And next up, none other than the Texans. I think here they definitely take a tackle, even though I know they definitely have some solid O line. I think they could definitely use some help here. I think Kyle Hamilton, I think this is too high for him. Derek Stingley has dealt with injuries. So the next solid pick is either Evan Neal or Ike Mekwanu. And honestly here, I'll just take Evan Neal. I think he's solid. I think he could play both guard and tackle. So wherever you want to place him and develop him, I think it'll be a solid pick for them regardless. And then hopefully trade Deshaun Watson and look for the QB of the future. Maybe they give Davis Mills one more year with an improved O-line. And maybe sign some weapons and they'll see what they could do. But definitely taking Evan Neal here. And then next is the Jets. There's so many different directions the Jets could go. Edge would be nice for them. I like Kalaftis. I think he's definitely a solid pick. I wouldn't mind that at all. But at this point, I feel like the Jets should be going best player available. I do like Kyle Hamilton. I'm not gonna lie, I'm very high on Kyle Hamilton, and I do like Derek Stingley. I think Derek Stingley is a very good prospect. I think injuries might drop him, but that's wait and see. We're not entirely sure how much his injuries will affect his draft status. But here, I'm gonna play it safe. I think I'm gonna go Ike Mekwanu, keep protecting Zach Wilson, and honestly, just give him some extra protection. Protection is always welcome, regardless of who your QB is. The better O line you got, the better he will perform. So Ike Mekwanu definitely the pick here. And now the Giants. I think the Giants are in a bit of a crosshair, especially if this were to happen. Ike Mekwanu and Evan Neal aren't here on the board no more. So I would actually end up taking George Kalaftis. I'm very high on George Kalaftis. I think he has a very low floor. He kind of reminds me of Emmanuel Ogba in certain extents. But I think he might not be the greatest edge of all time. Like, he won't be a franchise altering edge. But he'll definitely be a guy that could give you 8 sacks a year and then has a really high floor and a potential ceiling to give you 15 sacks maybe on a good year. So I think that's a solid pick for them. I very much enjoy that pick. And now we got the Panthers. I do think this will continue being the number one spot for a QB in this draft. And I like none other than Kenny Pickett. I'm a Matt Corral fan, but he also gives me Baker Mayfield vibes. And I do like Carson Strong's natural ability, but honestly, I think Kenny Pickett will be the proper pick here. No pun intended, but yeah, Kenny Pickett, definitely a solid pick for the Panthers. Get their QB of the future and finally have that figured out. And next, we got tackle for the Giants because they'll definitely need a tackle. And I think Charles Cross, I don't think it's a reach here. I think Charles Cross is a great tackle, and I think he'll be a solid pick for this team. I'm definitely taking Charles Cross here. And then we got the Falcons, which honestly, I think they're in a spot where you take best player available. You have a lot of solid pieces on this team, but I do think Kyle Hamilton is a very, very high upside prospect. They could start changing this defense. This defense definitely needs a remodel. The offense isn't horrible. Matt Ryan is still cooking. He's still alive. And I honestly think Kyle Hamilton is someone that could change your defense while simultaneously giving the Falcons another year, maybe wait and see, and take a QB next year's draft. I think there's no rush there. And I don't think they have to take one of these prospects that are, how do I put this? One of these more project of prospects. I think this draft is filled with a lot of these guys that definitely have high ceilings. I do like a lot of the QBs here. but I think their floors are also very, very, very low. But with that being said, we got none other than the Denver Broncos. Honestly, I kind of feel like picking for the Packers here. I think the Aaron Rodgers trade will happen. But since we're not, I'm picking David Ajabo. I like his speed off the edge. I think he's a solid pick. And I know they traded away Von Miller. The Rams, they're winning that trade so far. Could potentially win a Super Bowl. But yeah, David Ajabo, I think he's a fast edge player. I think he's more of a project. But I think he's still a solid guy. I think their defense is solid overall, and I think he'll be a good fit for them. And now we got none other than the Jets. And I think here is where they buy on upside. Derek Stingley drops all the way to 10. I think this is realistic. I think it could definitely happen. Will it? We don't know yet, but I think Derek Stingley, at this point, if you're the Jets, your corners have been bad for years now. So definitely take Derek Stingley here as a high upside, low downside type of pick. And definitely for Washington, I actually do like Matt Corral here. I think Matt Corral fits with this team and what they're trying to do. I actually like the weapons they have, and I like their O line. Their defense is solid, and I think they don't have that many needs, to be fair. But I do think Matt Corral fits. I think he could definitely develop. He could come in with a low downside. I think Matt Corral has the potential to be a very good NFL QB. It's just a question of can he do it, which at this point, who knows? But I think Matt Corral could definitely develop with the Washington football team yet to be named. And he could definitely be their franchise leader. I think he could be kind of not in the same vein as Justin Herbert, but a kind of like he showed promise in college, but we're not entirely sure what he will be in the pro level. And I think a lot of his flaws are more in part to his team than to himself. And I think he definitely still has a lot of room to grow, but I think this is a solid pick regardless. And next we have none other than the Vikings. For here, I've been mocking the Vikings none other than Ahmad Gardner forever now, probably since the beginning of the year. I fell in love with Ahmad Gardner very early on in the season, especially when your name is Sauce. You already know you're going to be good. And I think this is a solid. I think this is a great pick for them. I like Sauce. I think he's probably one of the best corners in the draft. If not, you could argue he is the best corner in the draft. Even though I like Derek Stingley's upside, I think Gardner is right there with him. And I think he'll be a solid pick if Minnesota makes his pick. I know there's been rumors about Minnesota possibly trading for a QB. Which, we'll wait and see at this point with a lot of teams. Because no one really knows what's happening this offseason, especially with a draft that doesn't have that many QBs. We might see a lot more teams trade for QBs. But assuming the Vikings make this pick, I think Ahmad Gardner makes a lot of sense here. And for the Browns, I think Odell definitely needs some help in the wide receiver department. I'm very tempted to take Jameson Williams. I think that would be the pick here if Jameson Williams did suffer that injury. So I think now Baker really needs a big body receiver. I think they already have some separation guys and a couple of speed guys. So I'm taking none other than Treylon Burks. I like Treylon Burks. I think he reminds me a lot of A.J. Brown in his build and his skills. And I think this could be a very good pick for them. Drake London also makes a little bit of sense here. I like his size. But I think Treylon Burks is the better player. So I'll definitely take Treylon Burks here. I think that's a solid pick for the Browns. And for the Baltimore Ravens, I think they got decimated with injuries this year. And I think a very good pick for them is actually Jordan Davis. I think even though he had limited snaps, I think he comes in Baltimore and instantly becomes a solid player for them. I think Jordan Davis, his upside is almost unmatched when it comes to the inside D line. I mean, you could argue DeMarvin Neal, but at the same time, I like Jordan Davis. I think Jordan Davis is a solid pick here, especially with who you have. I think Baltimore isn't really that many players away. I think they'll bring back a lot of the players that were injured, and they'll be right up there contending in the AFC again. I think Jordan Davis, even if he plays limited snap, he'll be very good on this D line, and he'll be a nice boost. And for the Philadelphia Eagles, the team that actually robbed my Miami Dolphins, I actually have them taking a linebacker here. We all know they're not known for taking linebackers at all. So will this happen? I don't know, but I think Devin Lloyd is a very good linebacker for them. I think they should definitely make this pick if possible, but we don't know. We don't know if they'll make the pick, and I think that's a question mark. I think they definitely should. I think they need a star linebacker on that team. But yeah, it was a solid team, and I think a linebacker like Devin Lloyd could make that defense significantly better. Definitely on that second level of the field. But when it comes to the rest of their positions, I mean, Andrew Booth Jr., he's a solid pick. But there is an argument for Kenyon Martin. I'm not entirely sure what the deal with Kelsey is. I think he might be gone after this year, if I read that report correctly. But he might not be. But I still think investing in the O-line, protecting Jalen Hurts or whoever is going to be your QB. I know they've also been mentioned, and especially Russell Wilson rumors. So I think Kenyon Green, solid pick here. I think he'll definitely be the pick. And then you have one defense, one offense. It makes sense. And then we got none other than the Chargers. I think the Chargers here, I think they've made some good draft picks throughout the years. I think there's definitely not that many people they need. But if I had to draft them somebody, I would take Andrew Booth Jr. I think at this point it's just a value pick. If you were to fall this far, I think, having an extra corner that you could develop, or maybe just plug right in. I believe the defense wasn't horrible this year, but you could always get better. And I think Andrew Booth, I think the Chargers are in a spot where they could definitely make small adjustments that, or like replace one player and then make a certain part of their team elite. I know they definitely have solid players on all levels of the defense, including Derwin James, Joey Bosa. You got Melvin Gordon. I know they have the linebacker they drafted last year, blanking on his name, but he's still an awesome pick. And I think Andrew Booth, definitely a solid pick here for that secondary. And we're here with the Saints. No Sean Payton no more. No a horrible luxury cap situation. And I think here is where they take advantage of Jameson Williams. I think he falls because of the injury. I don't think he would have fallen this far if there wasn't for the ACL injury. But I do think the Saints take advantage. I think I think Michael Thomas, I don't know what the future of this team holds with him. I don't know if he's gonna be here long term. But regardless, I think Jameson Williams is a steal here. I think they'll wait a year, bring him in next year, and then they could probably bring in another rookie QB, or if they're maybe signing or trading him for a QB. That could be interesting too, to have Jameson Williams pop up next year with whoever they draft and whatever they decide to go with this team. And then we have the Philadelphia Eagles again. See, this could all be Seahawks pick, so that's kind of crazy. But regardless, we got the Eagles picking here. There's some solid people here. I like DeMarvin Neal. I think he's a very good prospect. But I think we probably go edge here. I do like Trayvon Walker. I think he's a solid player. I'm actually a big fan of Jermaine Johnson, but that's probably because I saw him in Last Chance U, so that might be a little biased there. But I think he's a very solid player. I think he'll definitely have a solid NFL future. I wouldn't be surprised if he's around a second-round pick. He reminds me a lot of Jalen Phillips that the Dolphins drafted last year, but I will take Trayvon Walker here. I think he's a solid pick for the Eagles. Bolster up that defense, get Devin Lloyd, get Trayvon Walker. You got some more line, and if you don't trade for a QB, at least you got Jalen Hurts some help on the both defense and offensive side of the ball, and that's always welcome. And now we got none other than the Pittsburgh Steelers. And this team is actually very interesting. I have been mocking them, this one player, for a while now, and I think it's none other than Malik Willis. I think Mike Tomlin sees Lamar Jackson in this division. He sees Joe Burrow in this division, and he's thinking to himself, I need a difference maker. I can't just bring in another QB, whoever it may be, and have him game manage the game pretty much. I think he sees Malik Willis and he sees somebody that could physically compete with a Lamar Jackson. And I think Mike Tomlin believes that he could develop a QB. And I don't think it'd be out of the question. I think Malik Willis is definitely the pick here. I like this pick a lot. And I think with Najee, with the Steelers' abilities to draft wide receivers in the later rounds, I think this makes a lot of sense. And I think Malik Willis, if he ends up in Pittsburgh, could definitely have a very good career. And I think that's a solid pick for that team. And now we have none other than the Patriots. It's time to get the boy, Mac and Cheese, Mac Attackis, some help. I think Garrett Wilson is a solid pick. Johan Dotson, I think he's a solid wide receiver when it comes to speed. Chris Olave is a good route runner. I'm tempted to take Drake London because I think they could definitely use a big body receiver. He reminds me of like a taller Devontae Parker, and I think that's definitely the pick here. I think Drake London would work very well with someone like Mac Jones. Mac Jones is definitely more of a game manager, but definitely on those third downs, I think they could use a big body receiver that Mac Jones could just kind of throw it up there and he could go get it. And I think that's definitely a solid pick. I think Drake London makes a lot of sense for them. And now we got none other than the Raiders. The Raiders have a new coach. They have a new team coming in. Well, not a new team, but they have some issues with their past team, to say the least. I think here the Marvin Neal just makes a lot of sense. I think he could help with that D line. They made the playoffs, had a solid performance, but at the end of the day, they weren't high caliber enough. You could argue the Chargers choked away the playoffs rather than they earned the playoffs. But regardless, I think the Marvin Neal is a solid pick for them, and I think he makes a lot of sense. And now we got the Cardinals. The Cardinals defense fell apart later on in the year, and I think none other than Trent McDuffie. I think he's a solid player. I think he's definitely one of the more underrated corners in this draft. I think he fits very well with the Cardinals team. And you can make an argue for Care Elam. I am a fan of Care Elam and of Roger McCreary, but Trent McDuffie is definitely higher on my board than either of these two, with Care Elam being second, I'd say, between these three, and Roger McCreary honestly being last. I think he's a bit overrated, but we'll get into that at some point later, maybe. But Trent McDuffie, I think he's a pick here for sure. And now we got the chokers, the Dallas Cowgirls, letting the 49ers make it all the way to the NFC Championship, costing my Dolphins pick, to go all the way to 29. Can't forgive them for that. But honestly, this is a team that's very interesting because a lot of their positions are figured out. They don't have that many needs. I think edges could be a possible need, but I don't think the edges here in this draft are necessarily first round prospects. I mean, Drake Jackson, I like him a lot out of USC. I think he could be a solid pick, but I feel like he'll probably drop into the second round. So I think here you take best player available, or in this case, you take best wide receiver. No, I don't like. I feel like going wide receiver, but they still have. I mean, I wouldn't be surprised if Amari Cooper is traded. I think Amari Cooper could be traded, but I think Linderbaum makes sense here. I feel like they drafted a center. I'm not quite sure, so I don't think this pick. Like, I would take Linderbaum if I was them because I think he's a solid pick, and I think it's a steal to have him this late. But we don't. They don't really have that many needs as far as players. Like, a lot of their positions are figured out. So I think we'll just take Jaquan Brisker, the best safety on the board, and have that team play better. I mean, you could argue cornerback, which I think I will do. I think cornerback definitely makes sense. I think Care Elam actually fits with this team now that I think about it. I think he makes a lot of sense. I think he'd be a solid pick for them. So, I'll take Care Elam. And now we got the Bills. I think the Bills probably, I think if Lindenbaum falls this far, which I don't think he will, I think he might definitely go way earlier in the draft. But, sometimes it's kind of hard to mock centers. But I think the Bills, if he were to drop, I think this would make sense for them. Why not take a young center, replace your current center, and give Josh Allen someone that could protect him for the next 10 years or so and snap him the ball? So why not take Lindenbaum here? And now we got the Titans. They definitely have a lot of needs. I think corner is definitely one of the bigger ones. They lost to the Bengals. They lost to Joe Shiesty and them boys. Honestly, I think that was a great game. More so from the Titans defense. I think their offense could definitely use some help. But at the same time, it's kind of harder to draft offense, especially at this point. I think you could argue wide receiver, but they still have Julio and AJ. So I think Roger McCreary makes a lot of sense here. And next we got Tampa Bay Buccaneers. With the news that Tom Brady is retiring, this makes this so much more interesting. I think they will get Garrett Wilson. I think he makes a lot of sense here. They lost Antonio Brown. and they might potentially lose Chris Godwin. So, have a potential replacement ready for whoever will be your next QB, whether it's Aaron Rodgers or potentially somebody else. That remains to be seen, but I think Garrett Wilson, great player, great pick for them. And now the Packers, it's interesting. I think at this point, you have to make moves considering people might leave you. And I think a solid pick for them right here is definitely none other than George Pickens. I actually am a big fan of George Pickens. I think he's a solid pick. And I think he could potentially be the Devontae Adams replacement. You got to get Jordan Love some help. I like Chris Olave a lot, but I also think Chris Olave is more of a slot slash speed guy. I think George Pickens could be more of that number one option, that more full like builds wide receiver that could do everything, and I think that's a great pick for them. And now you come to the Dolphins. I think third wide receiver taken off the board. I actually think Chris Olave makes a lot of sense here, which could be what I do. But I'm a very big fan of Nakobe Dean. I feel like the Dolphins are really one linebacker away from the defense being truly elite. And by elite, I mean top three in the league. And I think Nakobe Dean fits a need. As a Dolphins fan, I could count how many times Jerome Baker let a tight end or wide receiver or running back get like a 20-yard gain because he couldn't really cover. That's not really his thing. He's a good pressure linebacker, and I think Nakobe Dean fits the Dolphins. I think he fits what the Dolphins are trying to do. I think he'll be very, very good on this Dolphins team. Potentially defensive rookie of the year next year if the Dolphins could acquire him. And now we have the Chiefs. I think the Chiefs here take best player available, regardless who it is. And I don't think that player is Sam Howell. I think Chris Olave could make sense, if they want to move on from Pringle. I know Pringle is solid, but Olave is definitely better. I'd say. I mean, you never really know. But, I think Trevor Penning, great tackle prospect. You could put him at guard. I wouldn't say the Chiefs O-line is perfect by any means. So I think Trevor Penning, maybe put him at guard. I think that's a great pick for them. Chris Olave does make sense. But if we're going to pick one or the other, I will go with Trevor Penning. But, actually, you know what? I think the flashy pick makes sense here. I think that's more on brand with the Chiefs. Because they definitely, like with the Clyde Edwards-Helaire pick, they've definitely done picks like this before. And I think now just give Patrick Mahomes more weapons. I think it makes sense. Chris Olave, I think that definitely makes sense. And actually, I think Trevor Penning would make even more sense for the Bengals. I think the Bengals O-line definitely needs a makeover. And Trevor Penning would give them a good pick. Whether they win this or not is questionable, but, whether they win the Super Bowl or not, it's questionable. But I think Trevor Penning makes a lot of sense regardless. And he could fit with the team. And now we have none other than the Lions. We got edge. So now do we get a wide receiver? Do we get a QB? There's a lot of QBs. Sam Howell, that could be a good pick. Johan Dodson, that could be a good pick. Carson Strong, Desmond Ridder. Honestly, there's a lot of good picks here, but I think at 32, I think it'll probably be a QB. I think it'll be Sam Howell, Carson Strong, or Desmond Ridder. But for the sake of this mock draft, I'll take Sam Howell with 32. I think he'll probably be the one that's most highly viewed. Even though personally, I see a lot of Baker Mayfield in him, even more than I saw in Matt Corral. So I think this is the pick that the Lions will make. And with that, the mock draft is over. Honestly, I think this is a solid mock. I think it could definitely happen. Similarly to this, I think there's definitely a couple picks that could sway here and there. And there's always the odd pick that happens, and everyone's confused and it's like, damn, that guy went that high. Who would have thought? But with that being said, we'll see how this plays out. We'll see the Pro Bowl this weekend. So we got some football before the Super Bowl. With that being said, we'll see how all this plays out. I'll see you next time. Peace.